Welcome back to another recap. Today we're diving into the series Hell Motel. The first episode opens in the fall of 1995. A violent storm is rolling through as newlyweds Joey and Caitlin check into the Cold River Motel. When the staff learns they are newlyweds, they offer to throw in a free bottle of champagne with their stay. While Caitlin slips away to freshen up in the bathroom, Joey waits in the bedroom. But when he answers the knock at the door, he's brutally attacked and killed by a masked intruder. Caitlin hears the struggle, rushes out, and is attacked as well. 30 years later, the infamous Cold River slaughter has become a staple of the true crime world. Endless theories, debates, and speculation. Now a group of enthusiasts has arrived at the newly reopened motel, invited to spend the weekend immersed in its grisly legacy. The motel is under new management, run by Portia and Ruby, and this is their grand opening. On the road, we meet the eclectic group, Paige, a faded scream queen who once portrayed Caitlin in the movie adaptation, Crow, a spiritualist, Blake, a final boy turned tortured writer, Kawayan, a murder-obsessed artist, Andy, a true crime academic, and Adriana, notorious for her dangerous fascination with serial killers, as in going around banging every serial killer she can find. That evening, the guests gather for dinner prepared by the eccentric chef Hemingway. He serves a tofu and grain recreation of Caitlin's corpse. Appetites shift from disgust to intrigue once they actually taste it. Then Hemingway tops it off with a chilling cocktail, vodka mixed with his own blood. Portia and Ruby announce the night's entertainment, a seance led by Crow. Attendance isn't optional. Before they begin, a stranded couple, Floyd and Shirley, knock on the door, seeking refuge from the storm. There are no vacancies, but after some pleading, Portia and Ruby allow them to park their RV out back. The group is then taken on a tour of the motel, reliving the key murder scenes. The final stop is the basement, the place where Caitlin was sacrificed. Paige is asked to put on a Caitlin costume and play the role for the event. Later, Paige visits Floyd and Shirley in their RV. They recognize her as the actress from the old Cold River movie, and after chatting, she asks for a ride out of town once the storm clears. On her way back, Paige is ambushed by a masked attacker and chased through the woods, only for Ruby to unmask herself. The whole ordeal was staged as a marketing stunt, filmed by Portia to promote the motel. Back inside, the group erupts in anger when they're told anything that happens over the weekend can be used for publicity. Andy protests, but Portia reminds them it was in the contract. The real bombshell? Paige is being paid to be there. Hemingway feels stung and lashes out at Paige, calling her out for taking her clothes off for the role. Paige is hurt and goes back to her room. Hemingway vows to leave with Floyd and Shirley as soon as the storm lifts. Later, Andy checks on Paige. She admits she only took the Caitlin role out of desperation and confesses the guilt of disrespecting Caitlin's memory. Andy reminds her Caitlin wasn't the only victim that night. Meanwhile, Hemingway heads to the sauna. While inside, he notices a masked figure outside the sauna. Assuming it's Ruby again for another promo, he relaxes until the door is locked and the heat cranked up. He pounds on the door, but no one hears him. At the same time, Floyd and Shirley ask to use the motel showers. Portia and Ruby agree, if they pay the full nightly rate of $335. Floyd reluctantly hands over his credit card. Back in the sauna, Hemingway succumbs to the unbearable heat and collapses. Downstairs, the seance begins. Crow attempts to contact Caitlin, but the ritual is cut short when the group realizes Hemingway is missing. Adriana recalls seeing him head to the sauna. Ruby races there, finds him locked inside, and screams for help. By the time the others arrive and break the lock, Hemingway is dead, cooked alive. Accusations fly. The group points fingers at Portia and Ruby, who insist they had nothing to do with it. When they demand to call the police, they discover there's no cell service. Floyd suggests everyone pile into his RV to escape. But before they can act, an explosion shakes the motel. They rush outside to find the RV engulfed in flames. The episode closes with a chilling flashback. 30 years earlier, young Floyd and Shirley are revealed as the ones who sacrificed Caitlin in the motel basement. The second episode opens with a flashback. Portia and Ruby purchasing the Cold River Motel. Portia is hesitant, but Ruby convinces her. The idea of transforming a site of infamy into a true crime destination is too tempting to resist. Back in the present, the group stands in the rain, watching Floyd and Shirley's RV burn. With nowhere else to go, they retreat inside, tense and shaken. Portia and Ruby attempt to calm everyone down, but the guests aren't buying it. Suspicion starts to build around Ruby, while Portia seems to escape most of the blame. Talk of leaving arises, but Floyd quickly shuts it down. He's hunted across the state for years and warns of mountain lions, black bears, and the storm itself. His experience as a hunter sparks an argument with Crow, who despises the idea of killing animals. Portia breaks it up and orders everyone back to their rooms, promising a plan by morning. Blake, however, announces he's heading to the kitchen to grab both food and a knife. In their room, Floyd and Shirley discuss Hemingway's death. They insist they weren't involved. Floyd speculates there could be a copycat killer, while Shirley suggests a real Satanist may be finishing the ritual they started years ago. One thing is certain: while they may not have killed Hemingway, they were definitely behind the RV explosion. Meanwhile, Adriana joins Blake in the kitchen. She insists they should room together. Safety in numbers, and she trusts him because he's already survived horrors like this before. Elsewhere, Ruby and Portia return to the sauna, deciding to lock it off as a crime scene. They attempt to move Hemingway's body to the walk-in fridge, but his remains fall apart in their hands. In the dining area, Crow and Andy talk. Crow explains his calmness comes from embracing fear instead of turning away from it. Andy thanks him, and Crow admits he's glad Andy is there with him. Later, in Adriana's room, she asks Blake about the Sigma Di killer. He's irritated, questioning whether the current nightmare isn't enough. She presses on, revealing details about her past with imprisoned killers. Casually admitting her work as a flight attendant makes it easy to visit them around the world. Back in Andy's room, Crow encourages him, calling vulnerability a form of bravery. When Andy suggests hanging out together, Crow declines. He's determined to make a run for town and find help. Andy gives him a waterproof jacket before he disappears into the storm. Shirley notices Crow leaving and sends Floyd after him. They need 9 sacrifices to open the portal for Baphomet, and letting someone escape jeopardizes their plans. Ruby returns to her room and argues with Portia. Portia lashes out, accusing Ruby of dragging her into this nightmare and calling her obsession with true crime grotesque. Ruby defends it as their dream, but Portia insists it was only ever Ruby's. Their fight grows so loud the entire motel hears it. In another room, Adriana seduces Blake. She convinces him to show his scars, which excites her even more. She chains him up with handcuffs under the guise of foreplay, but when she suddenly brandishes a switchblade, Blake snaps, furious at the betrayal. Outside, Crow runs into Floyd in the woods. A tense standoff plays out after Crow narrowly avoids a wolf. Crow admits he doesn't trust anyone, least of all Floyd. Before things escalate, Andy appears and convinces them to return to the motel. Back inside, Shirley manipulates Kawayan, who is spiraling over his lost artistic edge after witnessing real violence. She tempts him with the idea that only committing murder himself can make his art truly authentic. Once Andy and Crow return, Crow warns him that Floyd is absolutely a killer. Andy remains skeptical, but Crow insists they must stick together. Ruby, exhausted, apologizes to Portia, who has knocked herself out with sleeping pills. Ruby swallows a few herself and collapses beside her. Elsewhere, Adriana and Blake lie together after sex. She casually asks who he thinks will die next. When he refuses to speculate, she volunteers Paige, then suggests they could kill anyone and simply pin it on the psychopath. Blake, disgusted, gets dressed and storms off, weapon in hand. That night, Ruby and Portia sleep side by side. Suddenly, Portia's mouth is covered, and she is stabbed from beneath the bed. Ruby sleeps through the entire attack, proving she couldn't be the killer. A quick flashback shows Portia and Ruby together just before the guests had arrived. Back in the present, Ruby wakes to find Portia's lifeless body beside her. Her screams echo through the motel, and the episode ends. The third episode opens with Ruby discovering Portia's corpse, her heart torn from her body. Her screams bring the others running. While Ruby panics, Crow casually remarks that a video of the murder would have been marketing gold. He also just happens to find the murder weapon under the bed. Ruby denies ownership, insisting she woke to find Portia already dead. Blake questions how she could sleep through such violence. Ruby admits she had taken a sleeping pill. Overwhelmed, she flees in tears. Paige says she believes Ruby, but Crow mocks her for living in a fantasy world. Paige goes after Ruby while the others argue about what to do next. Outside, Ruby blames herself, saying Portia died because of her obsession with the motel. Before the conversation can continue, Crow and Blake drag Ruby back inside, tie her to a chair beside Portia's body, and post Crow as guard. Elsewhere, Floyd and Shirley discuss the situation. They're unsure which of the guests killed Portia, but they agree on one thing: keeping everyone trapped inside benefits them. Andy brings Crow some coffee as he stands watch. Andy warns that he won't let Crow kill Ruby. Crow denies that's his intent, claiming the group isn't under his control. He's just simply helping them express their true voices. Their tense back and forth ends with Crow admitting he doesn't take his leadership role lightly. A flashback takes us 10 years earlier. A young Crow sneaks into the motel basement to smoke weed and commune with Caitlin Spirit. He succeeds. Caitlin tells him the gateway remains open and must be closed. To do that, he must find and kill the woman. When Crow asks who she is, Caitlin cannot say. Back in the present, Ruby frees herself and sees Crow guarding the door. She crawls into the heating vent, but it collapses and drops her into the basement. When the group discovers her escape, they quickly track her down. Cornered, Ruby takes Paige hostage at knife point, but it doesn't last. Crow, Floyd, Shirley, and Adriana descend on her and kill her brutally. Later, Paige, Kawayan, and Andy huddle together, shaken. They worry they'll be next, since they didn't participate in Ruby's murder. Meanwhile, the others stash Ruby's body in the walk-in fridge and celebrate. Adriana admits the thrill matched what she'd always sought in her dangerous affairs with killers. Blake pushes back, reminding them they just killed a person. Crow reframes it as self-defense. Another flashback. 10 years ago, Crow tries to convince a detective to reopen the Cold River case after his vision from Caitlin. The detective scoffs at psychics, but humors him. He tells Crow about Davin Renee, a suspect authorities like for the murders, though he had an airtight alibi. Back in the present, Blake challenges the group, wondering if Ruby was innocent after all. The others argue her actions proved guilt, but Blake insists they may have executed the wrong person. His panic grows. Adriana coldly reminds him they're all Cold River killers now. But it doesn't matter, it was self-defense and none of them are going to jail. That night, Floyd and Shirley talk privately. Floyd confesses he relished killing again. Shirley agrees, but warns that if the others escape at dawn, none of it will matter. She notices the storm has finally passed. Floyd decides they must steer the next kill, and he chooses Andy. Donning the Baphomet costume, he prepares to strike. But as he stalks Andy's room, Floyd hears a noise outside. He follows it into the night, only to be confronted by another figure in a Baphomet mask. A vicious knife fight erupts, spilling into the woods. Floyd is nearly defeated before Shirley intervenes, forcing the other Baphomet to flee. Back inside, Shirley tends Floyd's wounds. They puzzle over who the second Baphomet could be. Another flashback returns to the interrogation of Davin Renee. The detective pushes, but Davin clings to his innocence. Following Crow's advice, the detective asks if Baphomet is proud of him. The question unravels Davin. He smashes his head on the table, bites in his wrist, and bleeds out, leaving the detective furious at Crow for provoking him. In the present, Crow is woken by a whisper calling his name, begging for help from the basement. Armed with a knife, he descends, only to be ambushed by someone in a Baphomet mask. Crow wakes bloodied on the basement floor. Caitlin's ghostly presence tells him the portal is opening wider, and that he is destined to be sacrificed. The killer drives nails into the back of his skull. Upstairs, the others hear strange noises from the basement. They gather and descend, finding Crow on the floor, mumbling one word, Baphomet. The episode ends. The fourth episode opens with the group crowding around Crow, who's barely alive with nails hammered into his skull. All he can do is mumble Baphomet until he finally dies. They snap photos of the scene for evidence, then drag his body into the walk-in freezer. Andy checks on Paige, who admits the murders feel pointed, like sick poetry. Meanwhile, Kawayan notices blood on Floyd's back from the earlier fight. Floyd brushes it off, but Kawayan warns that sticking together is their only shot at survival. Floyd scoffs, unimpressed by Kawayan's murder art, then heads back into the freezer. There, he hears Crow still mumbling, barely alive. Instead of helping, Floyd finishes him off. He confides in Shirley, who immediately spins suspicion back onto Kawayan, hinting he might be the real killer. She suggests Kawayan may have let Crow linger on purpose. Later, Shirley corners Kawayan while he works on an art piece. He admits he mixes his blood with lacquer for his sculptures and casually slices open his own wound as proof. Flashback 30 years. A young Shirley barges into Floyd's bedroom, ranting about sin, salvation, and Satan. She reveals her father died in a fire, and there was no justice for him, then drags Floyd into a conversation about why God allowed Lucifer to fall. It ends with her showing him a summoning seal. Together, they try to summon Baphomet. Back in the present, Kawayan asks Shirley for blood for his art. She agrees, letting him slice her arm open. At breakfast, the group debates their next move. Andy insists they pack light and trek out for help. Blake agrees, but Floyd pushes for staying put. Paige hesitates, saying she's seen too many horror movies. Anyone who goes for help always dies. Andy tells her this isn't a movie. Tension escalates when Crow's severed head suddenly appears on a flagpole outside. Andy and Kawayan investigate and are ambushed by someone in the Baphomet costume. Kawayan barely survives and limps back inside. Suspicion spreads quickly. Blake interrogates the group, checking everyone's shoes for mud. Pages are dry. Floyd tries to shut him down, but Shirley ends up showing their boots anyway. Shirley later visits Kawayan, who's still working on his statue. He vents about the group ignoring him and threatens to leave alone once he's finished. Shirley tries to twist his words, pushing him toward a confession. Kawayan calls her just as corrupt as the rest. Another flashback. Shirley and Floyd travel to the motel site decades earlier, drawn there by ley lines of ancient energy. She tells Floyd that with fire and blood, they could summon something powerful. He asks how much blood. Her answer, a lot. In the present, Adriana confides in Blake that she's rattled by the motel and frozen up during the attack. Blake reassures her and lets her stay in his room while he fetches cards. Meanwhile, Floyd and Shirley decide it's time to cull the herd. Their first target is Kawayan. Floyd picks a fight, giving Shirley the chance to drive a knife into him. While Shirley chants a ritual, Floyd saws open Kawayan's ribcage. A Baphomet figure visits Kawayan in his final moments, smearing a bloody cross on his forehead before finishing him. Back in Blake's room, he and Adriana play cards while she admits her guilt over Ruby's death. The episode ends with Andy discovering Kawayan's mutilated body, flowers stuffed into the cavity of his chest. Episode 5 begins with the group stumbling on Kawayan's mutilated body. The smell of blood overwhelms Paige, forcing her to step outside, with Shirley trailing after her. Adriana, disturbingly unbothered, admits she likes the smell, sending the others scattering. Inside, Andy warns that the killer must be among them. Floyd half-jokingly suggests it might be him, sparking accusations that spiral into finger-pointing. Tension peaks when Adriana spots movement in the trees. They rush outside and catch a hooded figure. It's JP, the limo driver. He begs for his life. The group drags JP to the walk-in refrigerator and shows him the corpses. Horrified, he insists he's innocent, pointing to fresh cuts on his face from a crash on Highway 86, and even reveals his gun. Adriana believes him. Blake, rattled, storms out. Later, Andy, Blake, and Floyd privately scheme to steal JP's gun and lock him away, but before they can act, JP barges in. The confrontation spirals into a gender war, men versus women, until Adriana seizes JP's gun and fires into the ceiling, taking control. Adriana declares the women will stick together. She marches Paige and Shirley to her room, leaving the men stewing in anger. The women drink, laugh, and talk relationships. Paige is shocked to learn Adriana dreams of real love, though her obsession with killers makes that unlikely. Shirley diffuses the tension by offering a tarot reading. Meanwhile, the men argue until Floyd's shirt rides up, revealing a suspicious wound. Across the hall, Shirley's tarot warns Adriana she must purge her darkness. Paige encourages her to change, which only sends Adriana into a rage. Flashback. A younger Adriana visits notorious killer Wyatt Garvey in prison. She flirts with danger, calling herself a man-eating polar bear. He calls her insane but alluring. In the present, Floyd snaps, attacking the others. Adriana, unraveling from the reading, brandishes the gun. JP tries to defend Floyd, but Blake lunges at him. Panicked, JP bolts. They chase him, until Adriana turns the gun on Paige, furious at her supposed betrayal. Before Shirley can intervene, JP bursts back through the door, and Adriana accidentally shoots him dead. The group restrains Adriana in the bathroom. They drag her outside and lock her in a shed. Alone, she discovers the glass roof and manages to climb out, only to be ambushed by someone in the Baphomet costume. Flashback again. Adriana, now married to Wyatt, visits him during a conjugal. Mid-passion, he denies killing another woman, insisting he's not a monster. When Adriana bluntly says she knows he did it and doesn't care, he snaps and chokes her. Back in the present, Adriana wakes up tied to a tree in the woods. The Baphomet figure toys with her, then slashes her throat and lets her body drop. That night, Paige appears at Andy's door, worried about Adriana. They check the shed, only to find it empty and the skylight shattered. Following tracks into the forest, they find Adriana hanging upside down with a bag over her head. The episode ends there. Episode 6 opens in the past, with a mass killer crashing Blake's frat house party and slaughtering his friends. In the present, Andy and Paige bring Adriana's body back to the motel, only to find Blake waiting with a gun. He accuses them of being the killer and declares he's done playing nice. He ties the group up, cycling through suspicions and theories, but Paige pushes back, telling him feelings aren't proof. Andy adds that Blake's just guessing like the rest of them. Blake snaps, reminding them his scars prove survival is every man for himself. Back in the frat house, Blake finds his girlfriend Farah hiding in the basement cooler. He promises to protect her. They manage to escape outside, but Farah spots her friend in an upstairs window and insists on going back. Inside, they find Angelica dying with a knife in her stomach. Farah pulls it out, but Angelica bleeds to death. Before they can grieve, they hear thudding and screams and hide under a bed. The killer enters, and moments later the police arrive. An officer confronts the masked maniac, orders him to drop the knife, and shoots when he doesn't. But the killer is wearing a bulletproof vest. Before the officer realizes, Blake and Farah rush downstairs. The officer tries to stop them, but the killer slashes him down. Blake and Farah run for a car, but without keys, they're trapped as the killer smashes through the windshield. They escape just in time and flee back into the house. In the present, Blake focuses his rage on Floyd, accusing him of being the most dangerous person there. Shirley defends her husband, but Blake points out that killers work in pairs too. When Floyd denies again, Blake stabs him in the back and presses a gun to his head, demanding a confession. Floyd refuses. Blake retreats into the walk-in cooler, takes swigs of liquor, and talks to Adriana's body about killing the others. Meanwhile, Andy convinces Paige to fish a penknife out of his pocket. She frees him while Blake drinks. When Blake returns, Andy nearly has himself loose. The group argues again, but Blake insists the police won't help and that their only chance is now. He points the gun at Floyd again, saying none of them really know him. Back in the past, Blake and Farah fight for survival until the killer unmasks himself. It's Cullen, one of the frat pledges. He recounts how hazing destroyed his life, leaving him broken and humiliated. Blake apologizes and tells him he will do anything, but Cullen demands a pledge test. He grabs Farah and pulls a knife at her throat. He gives Blake a choice. Blake could sacrifice himself and save his girlfriend, or let his girlfriend die and run away. Blake apologizes again, then unsurprisingly abandons her, running away. In the present, Andy breaks free, stabbing Blake. The gun goes off, hitting Floyd in the shoulder. Andy knocks Blake down, frees the others, and Blake fires until his gun clicks empty. He bolts into the wilderness. The group debates chasing him, but assumes he won't survive the woods. The timeline shifts back. At the frat house, police grab Blake on his way out, mistaking him for the killer. He insists the real murderer is upstairs. Later, cops credit him as the hero who ended the nightmare. Blake never corrects them. Instead, he leans into the role, even publishing a book about it. In the present, the motel group secures the place and tries to rest. Outside, Blake crawls through the woods, battered and broken. His final vision, Baphomet bearing down with a heavy-duty lawnmower. Blake is shredded to death as the episode ends. Episode 7 begins with Shirley waking Floyd, reminding him the day they've been waiting for has finally arrived. Floyd mutters that someone's going to die, but Shirley keeps him focused. They need 9 bodies, and one is still out there in the woods. Meanwhile, Paige wakes up and spots Shirley and Floyd heading into the trees. Moments later, the couple discover Blake's mangled remains. Floyd wonders how they'll get him back to the motel, but Shirley says they'll just gather what they can. Paige soon joins them and learns about Blake's death. She asks if Floyd was responsible, but he insists he thought the cold would finish Blake off. Suspicion starts to circle. Shirley claims she was with Floyd all night, while Paige admits she and Andy slept in separate rooms. Later, Shirley reminds Floyd that either Andy or Paige must be the killer, and as long as they're free, the ceremony is at risk. Floyd suggests an easy fix, but Shirley insists one needs to stay alive. Paige would make the stronger offering to Baphomet. They agree to frame Andy by planting a satanic book in his room. Inside, Paige finds Andy waiting in her room. She tells him about Blake's gruesome fate. A flashback shows Andy's academic humiliation. His thesis is torn apart by superiors who tell him he might scrape by teaching night school, but he'll never be a full-time professor. Back in the present, Paige, Floyd, and Shirley discuss the killer's identity. Shirley insists that if they'd wanted Paige dead, she'd already be gone. To prove good faith, they let her go through their belongings, and she finds nothing. They search hers too, again, nothing. But in Andy's things, Paige finds the planted demon-summoning book. She's shaken, but not fully convinced. Still, Shirley pushes harder, suggesting they use Ruby and Portia's sleeping pills to knock Andy out. Paige laces Andy's tea. As he drinks, he thanked her for standing by him and admits he doesn't trust Floyd and Shirley. His vision blurs. Too late, he realizes Paige has chosen their side. He tries to convince her he isn't the killer, but he collapses. The trio tie Andy up and plan to wait until the internet comes back. Paige struggles with guilt, but Shirley comforts her, even drawing her a bath. While Paige soaks, her phone pings with a signal. She dials 911, then researches Andy and the mysterious book, discovering it was reviewed by Shirley and Floyd. Shirley interrupts with a spa scrub, painting an upside-down cross on Paige's forehead before dunking her underwater and reciting a ritual. But a phone beep distracts her. Paige escapes, robes up, and confronts Shirley. The fight ends with Paige killing her. Paige rushes to free Andy, confessing that Floyd and Shirley were the true killers. She also reveals she called 911, but help is slow in coming. They plan to leave before Floyd returns. When Floyd finds Shirley dead, he snaps. Donning his Baphomet costume, he confronts Paige and Andy, accusing Paige of being the real killer. The three clash, stabbing and slashing. Floyd wounds Paige's arm, forcing her and Andy to retreat into the motel's basement, the ritual chamber. Floyd follows, ranting about the ceremony. Andy seizes a shovel and attacks. A brutal fight ends with Paige stabbing Floyd. As he bleeds out, he laughs, claiming Shirley was right all along, that Paige was the killer. Paige denies it and drives the knife deeper into his chest. With his last breath, Floyd chants a ritual, declaring she's opened the gates of hell. Paige silences him permanently by chopping off his head with a shovel. That night, Andy showers in Paige's room. For the first time, she admits she isn't afraid anymore, and he agrees. He mentions that the 911 operator promised help is on the way. The next morning, Andy notices blood on a ceiling tile. He pries it open and discovers a human heart. He glances at Paige, still asleep, as sirens approach. Outside, they recount their story to the police. One officer goes inside, only to return seconds later and vomit. Paige insists Floyd and Shirley were behind all the killings. But the final shot reveals a Baphomet costume and bloody knife on the motel roof. The finale opens with Paige back on a film set. She interrupts the action, questioning why Caitlin wouldn't save herself instead of waiting for rescue. The director agrees she's right and orders the writers to fix the script immediately. Later, Paige meets with him again to refine dialogue. She apologizes for sounding like a diva, but explains she's drawing from her own experiences. He reassures her that her insight is invaluable, seconds before a crew member interrupts, delivering flowers from Andy. Meanwhile, Andy struggles through teaching a comedy class. A student keeps challenging him with horror references, even mocking him as a supposed expert in both horror and academia. Frustrated, Andy snaps, rants at the student, and abruptly cancels class. He later visits Paige at her home, awkwardly explaining the flowers. She tells him they weren't weird. She admits he was thoughtful and invites him to her film premiere. He hesitates, but she assures him he can say no. Over dinner, Andy opens up about his stalled career. Compared to Paige's success, he feels stuck, unresolved, as if still trapped at Cold River. Paige dismisses it as trauma, insisting Floyd and Shirley were responsible for everything. She even rehashes the murders, showing how their involvement checked all the boxes. Andy isn't convinced. He presses her about the heart he found in her ceiling before police arrived. Paige denies knowing anything, suggesting it was part of the ritual or a setup by Floyd and Shirley. Andy backs down, apologizes, and says he only kept it quiet to protect her. The tension dissolves into a kiss, and soon they fall into bed together. Afterward, they reflect on the limo ride to the motel. Andy wonders if they survived because they didn't deserve to die. Paige counters, they lived because they worked together. She asks him again about the premiere, and this time he agrees. She explains the film's plot, but he criticizes it as an insult to the franchise. Paige brushes it off. If the film succeeds, she can finally escape Caitlin's shadow. At the premiere, Paige gives a short speech, but her moment is stolen when the director announces Caitlin's daughter as the new lead, introducing Paula. Watching the movie, Paige is blindsided. The director used a body double to kill off her character. Furious, she storms out, with Andy trailing behind. She confronts the director, who insists they had no choice once Paula tested so well. Paige threatens legal action, but he tells her do whatever she must. Despite the blow, Paige and Andy return to the theater. On screen, the Baphomet prepares to attack Paula, but the footage suddenly shifts to Caitlin herself, shown through home movies before cutting to her corpse. Then crime scene photos of Cold River's victims flash across the screen. Horrified, Paige and Andy race to stop the projector, but the director gets there first, only to find the exit locked. Moments later, a figure with a blinding flashlight murders him. Stumbling back onto the stage, the director bleeds out in front of the audience, sending everyone fleeing. Alone in the theater, Paige accuses Andy of the killing. Andy fires back, accusing her of orchestrating everything just to reclaim relevance. Their argument spirals, with each hurling accusations until Andy lashes out, telling Paige she's nothing like the real Caitlin. The remark makes her realize the truth. Caitlin was Andy's mother. Andy denies involvement in the murders, but Paige doesn't believe him. In a fury, she seizes the director's machete and stabs Andy. The act horrifies her immediately. She breaks down, apologizing over and over as he bleeds. Police storm in. Andy, still alive, tells them Paige tried to kill him and was behind the Cold River murders. Paige protests, but she's still holding the knife. The officers open fire. As she lies dying, Andy whispers that it's over and calls her a final girl. Her last words to him, "See you in hell." The season closes with an eerie twist. An actress named Katie, auditioning for the role of Paige in the next Doom Service Hell Motel film, delivering the exact same chilling line, "See you in hell." What really happened at the end of Hell Motel? The finale leaves us with one burning question. Who was the third person behind the Baphomet mask? The show throws two obvious suspects at us. Paige, the washed-up actress, desperate for relevance, hiding behind her frail persona. She certainly had motive. Killing the others would keep the spotlight on her, while making her seem like a true final girl. Or Andy, supposedly Caitlin's son, avenging his mother's death, punishing those who turned her tragedy into a sideshow attraction. But here's the problem. Neither case fully holds. Andy was visibly horrified when he found the heart in Paige's room. Hardly the reaction of a cold-blooded mastermind. Paige, meanwhile, insists Andy was the killer in their final confrontation, but her certainty doesn't prove anything. In fact, both of them die still pointing fingers at each other, leaving the truth unresolved. Why the murders point to someone else? The third killer didn't just slash for fun. They tailored each death with intimate precision. Hemingway was cooked alive, echoing how he served Caitlin's body. Portia's heart was literally ripped out, proof she had one after all. Adriana's death mirrored the methods of her serial killer husband. Kawayan was brutalized by Floyd and Shirley, but finished off by the third killer, flowers planted inside his chest. Blake, who once refused to sacrifice himself for love and die by the knife, was shredded by a lawnmower, death by 1,000 cuts. These weren't random kills. They were punishments designed to expose the darkest truths of each victim's life. But how could Paige or Andy have known all those intimate details, especially Blake's private failings? This is where the third option gains traction. The show hints that maybe neither Paige nor Andy was the true killer. Instead, the Baphomet mask could have been worn by someone else entirely. Someone who knew everyone's secrets, someone operating just out of sight. A character the audience never got close to or understood their motive. This possibility explains why the finale feels so unresolved. The real third killer was never meant to be revealed. The blame game between Andy and Paige was a misdirection, a red herring to muddy the waters and keep the mystery alive. Final thought. If Hell Motel really is a one-and-done miniseries, we may never get a clear answer. But the most compelling interpretation is that the third killer wasn't Paige or Andy. It was someone else entirely, a figure who understood each victim on a level no one else could. That ambiguity might frustrate some viewers, but it leaves the story lingering in the mind long after the credits roll, like a door left open in a motel you'll never check out of. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time,